As the offseason program continues outside Paul Brown Stadium, Alex Cappa has a core muscle injury we'll have to talk about, and Jackson Carman addresses the media for the first time in 2022.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We appreciate all of you who subscribe and follow and click thumbs up buttons and click bells and enjoy our content. And if you want to be one of those cool folks, you can hit those buttons too. We'll be delivered to your eyes and ears when we drop our episodes every day. And James, today was the open day of practice at the Bengals offseason program. We had an open locker room, which is a real treat for you and the rest of the Bengals beat writers to get a little bit more time in with some of these players and one-on-one and small group settings. And we also got some injury updates on a number of players, including Alex Cappa, but one of those players working on the rehab field was T. Higgins, and you told me the start of a hilarious story, a really good interaction you had in the locker room today.
Yeah, this is the beauty of open locker room, right? Is you're able to interact with these guys, get to know these guys. And I've talked to up and down the roster. I've been trying over the past couple of weeks to talk to everybody and get to know everybody, because when you're covering a team and you're talking about a team as much as I am, which it's not just here on Locked On Bengals, but certainly here on Locked On Bengals Daily, we're going to say good stuff. We're going to say bad stuff. We're going to say stuff that's borderline that they may hate or disagree with. That's okay. That comes with the territory. But you want them to know that you're human too, as you're saying that, and you view them as a human and build that rapport. Just so when that does happen, they understand it and you understand it, and everything can be okay. So it just makes things smoother. And so I hadn't gone up to T. Higgins yet. And, he had been busy. Last week was, a busy week. I talked to some guys, but didn't get over to T yet. And T, called me over right at the start of open locker room. And he's like, "Hey, James." And I'm thinking, like, what other James is on the team? I'm not thinking he's talking to me. Like, why would T. Higgins be calling me over right now? He's talking with Mike Thomas and Jamar Chase. He's like, "James, come over." He's like, "Is Secretariat an athlete?" And I'm like, "What?" I swear, I was like, What? Is Secretariat an athlete? And he's like, "You don't know who Secretariat is?" And he's looking at me crazy for a second. I'm like, "No, I do. I wasn't ready for this, T." So I was like, "Yeah, I think people consider him an athlete." There was this big debate about it, but people consider him an athlete. I was like, "I don't." And then Mike Thomas and Jamar were like, "Thank you." and T was like, "Hey, I didn't say he was, but people consider him one." And so this is probably going to spark a whole debate amongst our listeners. I don't think he was. And then we got into how big horse jockeys were and all those things, like size-wise or small. Because T was like, "Man, they're shorter than you." And I was like, "Yeah, they're a lot shorter than me. I'm not that short, T." It was pretty damn funny. But that's the beauty of open locker room. And as I get you to react to that, some are like, "Oh, come on, give me some football stuff." T. Higgins got that full range of motion. He's not participating in the football, catching passes and stuff, but he's out there moving. Looks like he's in good shape. So I think he's going to be just fine for training camp.
Yeah, a bunch of guys on the rehab field, but Secretariat as like the horse, right? We're talking about.
Yeah, and he is. That was a big thing. Like when Secretariat was at his peak, and it was like, is Secretariat the greatest athlete of all time? Like I remember the debates, and I thought they were stupid, but and I don't think the average fan, like sports fan, considers a horse an athlete. But I remember there were columns written in extras. Oh, of course it's an athlete. And so that was the debate that was being had in the Bengals locker room, which I love, by the way, because these guys are just like you and your friends having debates, crazy debates about whatever the hell comes to mind or comes up at any given day.
I just think that's so funny that these guys, I mean, he's an athlete for a horse, I guess. What's the definition of an athlete? Like if you're talking about horses, anyway, T. Higgins, full range of motion, working on the rehab field with Nick Cosgray, along with Brandon Wilson, Joe Bacci, Joseph Osai, and Marcus Bailey. All those guys, according to Zach Taylor, as he was walking off the field talking to the group of reporters on the sideline, are expected to be ready for camp. But the biggest injury note of the day is Alex Cappa, who has a core muscle injury. It's expected to keep him out for a couple of weeks, according to Zach Taylor, who wasn't ready to put a real timeline on it, but it would be at least a couple, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows. And these core muscle injuries, you want to make sure they heal, especially for an offensive lineman where core strength is paramount. Very, very important for them to functionally do their job in the trenches. But what that means is probably nothing significant long term. There's no fear, it doesn't sound like to me at this point, that he is in jeopardy to start the season. And
He
you
said
hope that
weeks.
remains the case.
Yeah,
Right.
Zach, sorry to cut you off. He said weeks.
Right.
So
Which you would hope doesn't linger past weeks. Sometimes these things do, but hopefully it doesn't, right? That's all I'm saying. But what it highlighted was Hakeem Adeniji at right guard and Jackson Carman at left guard. And this is what Bengals fans who want them to go sign another interior offensive lineman, something that we've talked about. Bring back Quentin Spain. Find Ode Abushi out there, a veteran who has experience and can give you 300 snaps if he needs to, that are average or almost average at least. But instead, we're doing what we talked about with Eric Eager yesterday. And now, instead of asking one guy to hit out of 4 guys at left guard, now you need 2 guys to hit out of 4 guys at left guard and right guard.
Yeah, it makes it much more challenging. And to me, I wouldn't expect to see Alex Cappa for the rest of the offseason program. You know, you dismissed June 14th-ish, right? That second week of June. And so if you're doing that, that's great. See you at camp, Alex. Get better because you need them. And at the same time, what I think the Bengals are going to do, and there's a couple spots, they do need to add a piece here, add a piece there. And they do have some roster spots open. They're not at 90 yet. So we'll see if they do that. But it is a reminder, man, you're one injury away from being much closer to that Super Bowl line than the line that we've envisioned, which is this bona fide, awesome line protecting Joe Burrow. And so that's a scary thought. You hope those guys behind the big 3 that they signed, you hope those guys are much improved this offseason and are much better in 2022 when the season rolls around.
Yeah, that's something that we'll find out. Maybe Hakeem Adeniji and Jackson Carman are fine. Maybe. But that's that dice roll we're talking about, right? And the other good point that Eric made when we were chatting with him yesterday, and if you missed yesterday, we chatted with PFF's Eric Eager about his quarterback tiers and about the Bengals offseason and about the Bengals' chances in the division and in the conference in 2022. And one of the points he made is that the Bengals are in a position now where they've done enough in the offseason where if they need to trade for a veteran offensive lineman, that is a very realistic option to get them through the season, to get them in through a playoff push they might want to consider around the trade deadline. And unfortunately, the trade deadline in the NFL is early for how long the season is. But if they're in a position where they need to make a trade, it certainly, I think, was a really good point that we maybe haven't given enough thought or time to considering is the mid-season trades, the one player veteran acquisitions that the Bengals now firmly in contending mode are in a better position to make now than they have been for quite some time. We also talked about Jackson Carman, who addressed the media today. We'll talk about his conversation with folks in the locker room, including James Rapien, coming up next.
But first, I got to tell you about AG1 because AG1 is something that I've mixed into my busy daily schedule for really one reason. I'm awful at eating vegetables, just bad at it. And so in my lifetime, I've missed out on the nutrients and the vitamins and all of the good stuff that comes with veggies because, I can't fit those, or I haven't been able to fit those into my normal diet. But AG1 Athletic Greens help me do that because it's just one scoop every morning when I wake up, and you can have it before your morning coffee. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods that are going to help you sleep easier, give you more energy throughout the day, improve your gut health, all of these different things. and literally it's just 1 scoop per day. I put it in 8 ounces of water. Boom. Just like that, I get all these vitamins and nutrients that are, well, helping me stay healthy and get healthier during the slow time in football. But let's be honest, there hasn't really been much of a break here. And the best part about it is it costs less than what your morning cup of coffee is going to cost as you stop at these stores on the way to the office. It's less than $3 per day, and you're going to improve your health. It's cheaper than that cold brew habit, as they say. So check them out right now. And Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of the immune supporting vitamin D, just a little dropper that I use every single day as well, and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NFL network. Don't delay. Go there now. athleticgreens.com/NFL network to try AG1 today.
James, Jackson Carman addressed the media in the locker room today. The Bengals leader for now at left guard, where
the favorite.
Cordell Volson will certainly push him along with some others perhaps. But interesting that first off the bench at right guard is Hakeem Adeniji, who of course started for the Bengals at right guard in the Super Bowl last year. I guess that shouldn't be too surprising, but not Deontay Smith, not Volson, not Trey Hill, but Hakeem Adeniji there, the first one off the bench today. And, don't read too much to anything in May because these are hardly practices in the first place compared to what we'll see in training camp. But I just thought that was interesting. Jackson Carman, also interesting. First time we've heard from him in quite a while. And again, really easy to read this interaction potentially the wrong way, potentially read too much into it. Maybe he's just nervous, etc. Maybe, we don't always do the best job of judging other people's tone, but I watched it. You posted the video over at allbengals.com. You were there. You can talk about your experience with it. It felt like he was trying to say the right things, but in doing so, didn't feel like he genuinely answered some of the questions and kind of did the thing you see politicians do sometimes where they just kind of deflect. And I understand why he might feel like he had to do it. But take, for example, and this feels nitpicky and I don't love nitpicking, but take, for example, he was asked about how he felt about his performance in the playoffs. And he was asked specifically, I think, about the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs when he played. And he felt good about it. And the follow-up question was, what about you personally in that game? He said, it's not really about me personally. It's about the team, and it's about whatever the team needs to do to win, which is great. That's all well and good. And I appreciate the team-first attitude and the team-first mentality there. But how does Joe Burrow answer a question like that after any game, even if they win? I feel like I played pretty well today. There are a couple throws I would have liked to have had back, or there are a couple throws that I didn't make as nicely or as accurately as I wanted to, or after games where he didn't play well, I felt like I could have played better today. And he says that more when they lose than when they win, to Jackson Carman's defense. But the difference in those answers could indicate a difference in the way they feel about how they're personally accountable or where their responsibility is. And again, I kind of hate reading too much into it. So apologies if you're one of the people out there that's like, what is he supposed to say? Stop nitpicking a 22-year-old kid. But this is Jackson Carman's reality now. And a small change to that answer would make me feel anyway, like he was really taking his growth and development very seriously rather than just saying what he thinks he's supposed to say.
Yeah, it's one of those things where his body language, the way he answered the questions, pretty similar to what he did last year, right? In that sense. And so is this just, he's not great, at the mic with the, cameras on him, and there weren't many cameras on him, a couple cell phones. I don't think any TVs were on him when the video that you, and I say TVs, TV people, were on him when you saw the video that I posted. That I think was just all writers. So it's one of these things with Carman, right? Where I'm going to need to see it, and regardless of what he said, I would feel that way. Um, Look, a lot of people are going to bring up the fact that he wasn't asked directly about the report that came out about him, and to me, nobody with the Bengals wants that asked, and I don't know if he would actually answer it. I really don't. I don't think that that's the case. I wonder if that whole interview would have stopped. I don't know. But it's one of those things to me where he could have talked about his immaturity, for example. And I just have, and I posted the full video. I tweeted it like Jake said. So if you want to watch it, you can. It's on YouTube. But I asked, what's the biggest difference? And this is a pretty common question that I've asked. I'll ask Jamar for sure. But I remember asking T, I asked Joe, or someone did. But the biggest difference, and the way I phrased it, what's the biggest difference in Jackson Carman a year ago as a rookie to Jackson Carman right now? And he just said a year of experience. And there was nothing more. There was nothing there. And that might be just how he wants to handle it. And he may go out there and perform at a high level. He said the coaching staff wants him at 323, 325, 323. He did look like he was in good shape. Talked about how he's eating pizza with cauliflower crust and vegetarian sausage, which sounds ridiculous. And I followed up with him after the mics were off and was like, man, you really eating cauliflower crust, huh? And it's like, yeah. And so, I know there's some people out there that can do it. I can't. I survive on Built Bars and AG1. But, it's whatever floats his boat. But no, I get that. I get the people that are like, this doesn't feel, and he's an offensive lineman, so it doesn't have to feel like Burrow. Burrow's the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to be a star. All right, Jackson Carman is not going to be this superstar player because he is a guard. And how many guards are stars? I don't know if you can name one, right? Do you know? I mean, Quentin Nelson's popular-ish for an offensive lineman. I don't think he's a NFL star.
Whitworth was quite popular.
He's a tackle.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, you know what I mean? So it's tough. You do get some popular tackles.
Whitworth did play guard a little bit. I'm
sure,
getting technical with you.
A spot guard. But you get my point. So, does Jackson Carman need to be as buttoned up as Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase from a media standpoint? I don't think so. Or T. Higgins or Joe Mixon. No, because they're not necessarily – he's not a star. But I don't think I saw anything Tuesday that's going to be like, oh, man, get on the Jackson Carman train. And
yeah,
I don't know if there's anything else to say outside of that. Like, as far as the report goes, like, the Bengals are rolling with him. And whether they knew it or not, they damn sure were. He was not going to tell me, right? He denied the allegations. That isn't going to change whether you ask him or not. So I think that part is where it is, and people are going to have their opinion regardless. And I'm not telling people how to feel about it. At the same time, do I look at Carman and am I like, all right, we'll see. Like, I just kind of shrug because I've been pretty critical of him. Like, I'm not going to run from that. That's also why I introduced myself to him. Yeah. And it's going to be, it's going to be one of those things where his on-field play, if he goes out there and he balls out, I think people are going to be like, okay. But right now, I just don't think there's much equity with that. And I'm a big equity person, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's all fair. Like, there's a wait and let's see what happens here. Frank Pollock did have some positive things to say about Jackson Carman. Bengals.com has these quotes, and James, you might have them too. So apologize if I'm not crediting you and you have them. But Frank Pollock said he's working really hard. It's evident he's focusing on doing some drills and applying what we're teaching as far as fundamentals, technique, and footwork. He's working hard. I'm excited about it. That's what Frank Pollock said about Jackson Carman. Said he's progressing, taking the next step. And I don't think Pollock would say this just to say it. Like, he's not going to throw his guys under the bus, certainly. But this is a pretty rosy report, I would say. And it doesn't, to me, strike me as Frank Pollock's motivational style to pump a guy up to media and not, not have that be earned. So it seems like perhaps there's some reason for optimism there from Frank Pollock. And, well, Aaron Donald will be practicing against the Bengals if Jackson Carman's looking for a preseason test, some joint practices with the Rams coming to the banks of the Ohio River this preseason. We'll talk about the preseason schedule, which we haven't discussed yet, and that joint practice plan with the Rams coming up next.
But first, a word from BetOnline because, well, if you haven't gone to BetOnline and signed up yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. But BetOnline is a one-stop shop for all of your sports betting needs. Whether you want to wager on the NBA playoffs and the Eastern Conference Finals, which is tied 2 games apiece, Boston taking it to Miami in Game 4, and now they travel back to Miami with the best of 3 in this best of 7 series with the series tied 2-2. Or maybe your team Steph Curry like me, and you want the Warriors to win it all, or you just think that they're going to, which I still have some doubts, but looking good for Steph and company. You can wager on them. You can wager on the Bengals to win the AFC North and so much more, from baseball to UFC to boxing to defensive rookie of the year with the Bengals. And, I don't know if Dax Hill's on that list yet. I think he will be by the time the season starts. People are sleeping on Dax Hill. Point is, though, you can go to BetOnline right now for all of your sports betting needs and sign up for free today. Don't delay. Go there now. BetOnline, where the game starts. Hey, real quick, Jake.
Yeah, you have one more point, right?
I do. Yeah, you could tell by my body language.
I could tell.
Look at that. See, that's the read. That's the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase 4th and 1, a little eye contact, go route. And so I shouldn't have even said that. I should have just went to my point.
I was ready.
You were ready. I love it. The one thing with Jackson Carman when it comes to his weight, and I just know people want to weight in shape, not just weight, but him being in shape. He said the biggest difference last offseason to this offseason from training, he said coming off his surgery and stuff like that, he had a real offseason this year because he had back surgery last year.
Yeah.
To go down and train with Duke Manyweather in Dallas. And he said to be able to work with him and do a lot of offensive line specific stuff that helped build his body. He said he was down there for about a month. So I know people would want to know that he worked out with Duke Manyweather, who, a lot of people look up to in the offensive line world.
A really solid amount of time too. And even if he's, who cares who he's working with, although great that he's working with Duke Manyweather, who has certainly had his hands on some prominent and improved offensive linemen in the NFL, but working for anyone on offensive line specific technique stuff for a month and coming into the offseason program at a good weight. Sounds like the coaches are happy with his weight, happy with his fitness levels. So these are positives. So, while we hit on certainly some of the criticisms of the way that he presented himself on the microphone, that could just be all it is. It could be discomfort on the microphone. And I wanted to make that clear at the beginning before I got nitpicky, and I don't like doing it because there could be tons of explanations for it. But we both had these observations that it was a little bit uncomfortable. It was a little bit awkward. And so we just wanted to hit on it. But we talked about it before the break, an opportunity coming for these guys to go against the defensive line that really ruined their second half in the Super Bowl. And it feels a bit odd to me that there's a Super Bowl rematch happening in the preseason, but the Bengals coaching staff and the Rams coaching staff obviously has a lot of ties. The full Bengals preseason schedule came out recently, James. I don't even know when it came out, which I shouldn't admit. Looks like May 24th at 9 a.m. there was a new time announced for one of the games, which is that last preseason game. And there are 3. The Bengals get 2 home games because they have 1 fewer home game in the regular season. They open hosting Arizona Cardinals on August 12th on Friday at 7:30 p.m. All primetime time slots for the preseason games, which I think is pretty normal. They go to New York to play the Giants on Sunday, August 21st for their second preseason game and their final preseason game, hosting the Los Angeles Rams in a battle of the backups. I highly doubt that very many starters play in the third preseason game, especially with these 2 coaching staffs, on NFL Network at 6 p.m. on Saturday, the 27th. And a lot of joint practices going to be happening that week, as Zach Taylor discussed after practice on Tuesday.
Yeah, I love this, honestly, because the one joint practice I covered or joint practice sessions was 2016. and it was Vikings. Teddy Bridgewater was still starting for them, but Vikings with Mike Zimmer and Bengals. And you just get so much. I remember Stephon Diggs versus Adam Jones, and it was like they're going at it. And so I love that because you know what I want? I want Jalen Ramsey and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Jalen Ramsey to go at it. I want Cheeto Awuzie to face off against Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. And they're not going to do that in that third preseason game. It's not happening. No one's – I bet you Joe Burrow plays – I would probably put the over-under BetOnline at like a half a snap, and I'd probably take the under as of today. I don't think that that's going to be in the realm of possibility, and maybe they do. But guess when they're going to play is in practice, and they're going to be able to simulate all these different situations against a team that is obviously thinking about and hoping to get back to the Super Bowl. And that's where the Bengals are. And they're in a tougher conference than the Rams, and so they're going to have to deal with that and navigate that. And so what better way to prepare for that than practice against the reigning Super Bowl champions and the team that they probably deep down feel like they should have beat. So now you get to practice against them. And I think the Rams, at least on paper, are better in some key areas. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be a really good practice. And Taylor talked after Tuesday's practice about the idea that you can put together these game situations that you don't always get in the game, and you can get a better version of that when you're practicing against another team. It allows you to do some things that you can't always do with just your own team. And so there are certainly some advantages to joint practices, and they tend to happen when the coaches are close and know each other well and know how each other operate. And obviously, Zach Taylor was a part of Sean McVay's practice system for a long time, and I assume does something similarly, but it sounds like the coaches are very comfortable with one another, and there's nothing to complain about here. Only good. Maybe a fight. Sometimes fights happen at these things, but generally speaking, from a football perspective, you're talking about positive outcomes with an increased level of competition in practice for that last week of preseason practices.
Yeah, and that the good part and the down part is as far as fights go. I mean, from the sound of it, Sean McVay's practices are so loose,
Yeah,
and just non-impactful.
but Jalen Ramsey will be there.
I think, yeah, you're right. I think I could walk into a Rams practice right now and be good to go. And so just because they don't practice, like Whitworth, his last real NFL practice was for the Bengals. That dude went there and never practiced. So, I agree. I guess Ramsey, but who would it be? Ramsey and Boyd? I don't think Jamar's going to get into that. I think he's just going to be like, all right, I'm going to go one on you. I don't know.
Should be fun. Should be fun either way. I'm looking forward to that. And that is your preseason schedule discussed. Another little homestand for the Bengals as they open at home and also have their third preseason game at home. So a little bit less travel at the beginning of the season, which is another nice little perk of this preseason schedule, and a lot of extra exposure. Super Bowl rematch of backups, though, who probably won't make the team. Pretty interesting little week 3 of the preseason for the Bengals. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We haven't talked to.
I'm cutting you off just because you know what that's going to be. What we're literally going to be talking about that week 3 is the punting battle.
Yep.
Is the battle for wide receiver 4. Have they done something there? Like there'll be like some pivotal things. We're literally going to be there to monitor Kevin Hubert's punts versus Drew Chrisman's holds. It's going to be something ridiculous. So I can't wait for that.
Week 3 training camp stories, man.
Yeah.
We're 3 months away? 2 months away? I can't do math. It's late in the show. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. If you haven't talked to our buddy Mike at Bengals_Santagata for a while, we might reach out to him pretty soon and see if we can talk about some of these rookies. We're also going to have a mailbag coming up again, as it's that time of year where your questions are our favorite thing to answer on the podcast, and gives us a really good idea of the things that you want us to talk about as well. So get your questions ready. Until then, Bengals fans, hoo-day, and have a good one.